Let me do something that I should have done before. Click the English, choose the English channel. Good morning, everyone, to this webinar, to this first preparatory webinar for the UN Water Conference. Welcome, everyone, and let's start. We are coming together as our sector gears up for the March Water Conference, which will start in exactly 35 days. And you know that we often say that when we convene high-level meetings, we say that the high-level meeting itself is just the tip of the iceberg, that everything that happens before and after, in particular at country level, is indeed more important than the meeting itself. And we think that this conference should be no different. And the proof of its impact will be after the meeting itself, with the change that we managed to achieve at country level. So let me start by thanking our partners, the government of the Netherlands, that together with the government of Tajikistan, as well as the UN, have made sure that we had a strong preparatory process for this meeting over the last almost 1.5 years. So as we get closer to the meeting at SWA, we have been thinking of what are the 3 main areas of action which will be key if we want to have an impact and a lasting one of the results of the conference at country level. And we thought of 3 important aspects which we think are key for a difference and for impact to occur and to be lasting in all of our partner countries and beyond. So one of them has to do with political will and with the engagement of heads of state and heads of government and their commitment to prioritizing water, sanitation, and hygiene. We know that without political will at the highest level, there will be less chances that the acceleration we need happens. So one of the things that SWA has been working with its partners, including with the government of the Netherlands, also UNICEF and the IRC and others, is precisely to making sure that heads of state and heads of government commit at the national level to the prioritization of water and sanitation, and this can be done through heads of state compacts, heads of state initiatives, and we think that the conference is an excellent hook for all of these commitments to progress at the highest level to be shared with the world. This is number 1. Number 2, accountability. What will make or break this conference is how well we can make the link between the promises, the commitments made, and actions at country level, right? And the concept of follow-up is key. When we look at other UN meetings or UN conferences, we see that this has not always happened. And when we talk, and as some of you might know, I was in New York talking with several ambassadors, and many of them shared their frustration with me that follow-up to UN conferences is not always ensured. And hence, it's difficult to assess with the current mechanisms that exist whether change is happening and whether commitments made are being implemented. In the water sector, and at least for target 6.1 and 6.2, we have a tested mechanism, which is our mutual accountability mechanism, which is a tested tool to ensure follow-up and accountability to the commitments made. And we think that this can be a good way to ensure follow-up to at least some of the commitments made under the water action agenda. And last but not least, we also think that using a human rights framework, meaning putting the furthest behind first, but also putting people and their needs at the center of discussions, is key to making sure not only that the discussions in New York go in the right direction, but also that actions at the country level also go in the right direction. So the human rights framework means not only that all UN member states have legal obligations, but also that non-state actors, including the private sector, also have responsibilities to respect human rights. So we will all come to New York next month with clear messages that articulate not only our aspirations as a sector, but also that take into account the previous aspects that I have mentioned. So, looking at this webinar, let me briefly explain to you how it will look like. Number one, we will explain what the conference will entail. This is number one. Number two, we will discuss and outline opportunities for country teams to engage before, during, and after the conference, including engagement with ministers, tabling commitments under the mutual accountability mechanism. As I said, commitments that can also contribute to the water action agenda, and working on a concrete follow-up plan. And third, we will give you a chance to ask questions and get answers from the conference co-host, from the organizers, the conveners, the co-chair of the Interactive Dialogue 1 on water, sanitation, hygiene, health, and human rights, as well as from our secretariat as needed. So without further ado, I will hand over to my dear colleague Muyatua Sitali, who will moderate the next segment of this webinar. Over to you, Sitali.
Muchas gracias, Catarina. Thank you so much. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from. Really excited to have the chance to speak with you 35 days before this really crucial conference, the last one of which happened 40 years ago. And we are now at this moment really, really close. So Catarina has already given us a really good background, emphasizing action, political will and action, accountability and action, and human rights being at the center of everything that we do in the course of this conference and beyond. So for this session today, we have really good speakers to help us understand the conference, as Catarina has mentioned, and also to understand the role that you could play, and for everybody to make sense out of it and make sure that we focus on that action. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Ms. Irma Uytaval, who is here today in her role representing the government of the Netherlands, which is one of the co-hosts. Irma has been the voice of our sector throughout the preparations for the conference, and she will speak about the structure of the conference and what the co-hosts expect to get out of it. After Irma, we will talk about the country preparatory process, and then we will also get an update from the SWA task team, which has been coordinating the conference preparations. At this point, I will hand over the floor to Irma. Irma, over to you.
Thank you, Sitali. Thank you, Catarina, for this nice introduction, and above all, of course, for inviting us, for giving the opportunity to speak about the structure of the conference. And before doing so, I would like also to say welcome to everybody. Good afternoon, good morning from wherever you are. Speaking about the structure of the conference, let me first, before doing so, let me first draw your attention to the following three criteria. Key criteria, when, the next slide, please. The three, yes, thank you. The co-host, the Netherlands, together with Tajikistan, and of course the UN partners, UNDESA and UN Water, started preparations for the conference more than 2 years ago. One of the first things they did was to agree on those key principles. I want to highlight them here once again, because they have really been our guiding anchor over the last couple of years, and not only have been, but they still are in every decision, every action we undertake. And I hope you will see them reflected also in the structure of the program, but also on how the different components of the program, of the conference are taking shape. So next slide. Yes, I put up a link to the program. The full program is available on the website. And as you will see, and I will explain, the program, it's a 3-day and fully packed program, starting on Wednesday, 22nd in the morning, with a nice opening ceremony and opening. And of course, the closing plenary on Friday, the 24th. I see there is a mistake here, in the afternoon. In those 3 days, the program consists in a couple of key components. Plenary sessions, 6 of them, 5 interactive dialogues, a multitude of side events, 4 special events, and of course, throughout the entire week, the 3 days, a plenitude of different kinds of cultural elements. The plenaries, of course, those are an important part of the plenary important part of the conference for member states, in which they have the opportunity to share their statements, to give their statements. Those plenaries are open also for non-government, non-state actors, but only in the capacity as observers. I will later speak a little bit more about the interactive dialogues, but let me also say something about the side events. Plenty of you, or many of you, may have already submitted applications for side events. Some of you may have heard back already on the approval of them. The UNDESA received really a record number of applications for side events, almost 1,300. So that is really an enormous amount also for UNDESA to process, of course. We feel pleased because, of course, we really wanted to have a mobilization of the world for this World Conference. So I think this is an indication of the enthusiasm and the opportunity organizations are taking, of the opportunity of the conference the organizations and stakeholders are taking. I know that Jasmine from UNDESA is also in this call, so I can understand that maybe questions on site events will be addressed by her later on. I also know that many of you may have asked for site events within the UN headquarters, and there is a limited capacity, less than 150, and UNDESA is still working on that. So you will receive information in the coming days, I believe, whether your site event has been selected to be hosted within the headquarters. Next to site events, there are 4 special events. I will speak about the special events a little bit more as well. Can we go to the next slide? Something about the interactive dialogues. You may have seen this, but I think it's good to mention them again. 5 interactive dialogues, each organized around a different theme. They are put up here, and they will be chaired by 2 member states, a combination of a developed and a developing country. The interactive dialogues will be hopefully, and that's why they are called interactive dialogues. They will enable a dialogue, especially between member states, but also opportunity for a dialogue between member states and stakeholders. Stakeholders are carefully selected, so they represent different sectors, different stakeholder groups. The informal preparatory working groups that were led by UN organizations, but included really a variety of different stakeholder groups, prepared for the stakeholder, for the interactive dialogues for each of them, a background paper, and they had the opportunity to provide recommendations for speakers and moderators. And I'm also happy to see that in the informal preparatory working groups, the stakeholders, as I mentioned, from civil society organizations, private sector, indigenous groups were all well represented. So in that way, they have been able to contribute to the content of the discussions during the interactive dialogues. Next one. Something about the special events. As I mentioned, there will be 4. Those are for the co-host very important. This is what the co-host proposed on top of the standard program of plenaries and interactive dialogues. This is important because it's a platform really that enables a very strong engagement of non-state actors, all stakeholders. Those themes are decided by stakeholders. We have had an intensive process of consultation, and well, this is an initiative by the co-host. They will be fully implemented by the stakeholders. You see that behind each theme there is a list of organizations. So they are this. Special events will be implemented by non-state stakeholders in partnerships, including different representing different sectors. Those events, you will see them on the website as well. They are open and they have capacity up to 500. Capacity for up to 500 participants, and make sure that if you're in New York that you are on time, because the door will close, I think, when there are the full capacity is reached. It's really the platform to go more in depth on some of the very important subjects that have been prioritized by the stakeholders. And last but not least, another way of participating is, of course, the Water Action Agenda. That is the next slide. As you may know, the conference, the results of the conference will be assembled in a summary document. We call it a non-negotiated outcome document, or in other words, the proceedings of the conference. But as Catharina very well phrased in the beginning, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity after 40 years on Water Conference. So we are really convinced as core partners that we have to grab this opportunity to really provoke real change, to make this a watershed moment. So that is why the Water Action Agenda is proposed by the co-host. This is an opportunity really to the Water Action Agenda to assemble all voluntary commitments, and commitments can be made by member states, by preference in collaboration with stakeholders, but also individual stakeholders, organizations, even individual persons can make their commitments, really their commitments to make a difference, so that indeed this conference is not only the top of the iceberg, that it will really provoke lasting impact. This is our opportunity, and we have to take this opportunity as best as we can. On the 25th of March, the Water Action Agenda will be, it should be the 24th of March, I believe. During in the closing plenary, the Water Action Agenda will be presented to the world. But more importantly, of course, is that this is not another document, but it will be accompanied with a clear implementation framework. And of course, as also Catharina emphasized, that we know how we can hold each other accountable for the commitments we are making for bringing about this lasting impact. This is an opportunity for everybody to contribute to, wherever you are, in what corner of the world, whether you are able to travel and be present during the conference or not, you can contribute to the Water Action Agenda. You see there is a link, and registering your commitment is quite easy. I think I will leave it here. I can imagine that there will be some questions later on. I will hang and around and answer questions if they come up later on. Thank you so much.
Perfect, Emma. The questions are not even later on, they are already here.
Oh, yeah, I didn't
Yes,
pay
yes.
attention to that.
We already have some questions, but what I'll do is I'll give you a little bit of homework. So you can go in the Q&A and there's some questions there, but also in the chat, and we'll bring some of these to the floor very soon. So just to stay tuned, and if you could respond to some of them in the chat, that'd be great, Emma. Let me invite my colleague, Angie Saleh from the Secretariat, who will explain a bit more on the opportunities for the country level engagement and preparations. And Angie will also take us through what the SWA task team that has been supporting the preparations for this conference has done. So Angie will do two things in this short intervention. Over to you, Angie.
Thank you so much, Sefali. And welcome everyone to the webinar. Thank you for being here. We want to share with you some ideas about how you can engage at country level with the conference and already start preparing for it. We know that most of you have already started preparing, but here are some additional ideas that we can hopefully take forward. So one of the things that we would like our country partners to do is coordinating country delegation meetings, try to make sure that everyone is on the same page before they come to New York, making sure that they have clear messages that they want to send during the conference and that they have everything agreed. Then another important step is briefing your ministers and other high-level representatives who are coming to New York. We would like to make sure that they also participate in the events that Irma has mentioned, and also in some SWA events that we have been sending you invitations for. Please make sure that in your briefings you include the SWA opportunities and also the SWA key messages, which I will be posting the link for it. You can find it online in our website in 3 messages in 3 languages, and it would be great if you can use them for the preparations and the briefings with your ministers and other high-level representatives. Mapping side events. See which side events already before you go to New York and before your delegation goes to New York, you want your government and your organization to participate at. There are already some news about the side events, as Irma mentioned, and more will be coming in the coming days. There are some SWA events that I will mention in the next slide that you can also nominate high-level speakers to speak at, and also other events and convened by our partners. So if there are events that you would like us to make sure your minister speaks at or participates in any other way, please let us know, and we will try to do the matchmaking between your organization or your government and the partners organizing the event. Another thing which is very important, as Irma was just talking about the Water Action Agenda, we would like to make sure that you table commitments to the Water Action Agenda, but also table them as mutual accountability mechanism commitments under SWA, so we can help in the follow-up process after the conference. As Irma said, the Water Action Agenda, everyone has great hopes for it. And we would like to make sure that those commitments are also reflected as MAM commitments to make sure we are all working towards the same direction and that the follow-up is being done properly from our side as well to push for these commitments to happen. Last but not least, if you're going to be in New York, let us know. Let us know if you will be there, if anyone from your government or organization will be there, if your minister will be there, if your head of state will be there. Please do write that in the chat and let us know so we can make sure we get in touch with you with our messages and with any requests to join any of our events. I will go ahead and do the next slide as well. Unfortunately, Neil Dott, who is the coordinator for our task team on the conference, could not make it, so I'll be filling in for him. What has SWA been doing before and now when the conference is only 35 days away, and what will we be doing at the conference itself as well and after. We have been coordinating key messages, as I mentioned, and I put them in the chat. This was done in a participatory process through our task team that has all the constituencies represented, and we are very happy to share them with you, and we would like everyone to use them. Also coordinating side events and matchmaking for events that still need speakers, engaging in interactive dialogues and special events. We have been providing comments to the concept notes of the interactive dialogues. We have been also providing comments to the concept notes of some special events, as I will mention later. And also, we are trying to make sure that our partners are well represented in both side events and special events. SWA will be convening a few meetings on the sidelines of the conference. We will be having a ministerial meeting on governance and finance with the World Bank. This will be an invitation-only meeting for ministerial participants, and it will focus on governance and finance, mostly for the countries of Eastern and Southern Africa. So it's sort of a regional meeting, but being done in New York. And we can talk more in the question sessions. If anyone has any questions on any of these events as well, we will be happy to answer them. Then we're also convening together with the government of the Netherlands, UNICEF, IRC, and other partners, a Heads of State Compact event that is also going to be a closed event. And we're hoping to get very high level participation in this. It is only targeted at heads of state and heads of government. Then there's also, of course, our mutual accountability event, which is under the title Justice Begins Here with Accountability. This is also an invitation-only event. However, we are sure that most of you or some of you have already received invitations for your ministers and for the heads of agencies or heads of organizations who will be coming to New York. This event will be on the 22nd in the afternoon, and we hope that your government or your organization will be represented there. We are also supporting the special event number 3 on reducing inequalities, implementing human rights. One of our partners is leading on this event, and we have been supporting through them to make sure that SWA key messages are reflected, to make sure that the speakers are representing our partners and their aspirations. Also on special event number 4, which is entitled Water Leadership Uniting for a Sustainable World. We are one of the organizations leading on this event, and we hope it will be a good event representing also different groups and how they have taken on the role of leadership in their communities and with their governments, and making sure that there is equitable access to everyone. I will stop here, Setali, and move the floor. Thank you so much.
Merci beaucoup, Angie. C'était très, très clair. Et maintenant, nous allons avoir les questions et nous allons avoir une discussion.
Thank you very much, Angie. We are now going to hold a conversation with the different panelists. So let me go back to English before I start this session. I would like to invite your questions via the chat. Thank you.
So, Emma, there was a question that came through that I think we could start with. And just before we get to Emma, I just also wanted to mention that we have other colleagues on the call, Kate and Paul. Kate Medicote is with WHO. Paul Devereux is with FCDO, and we also have Yasmin from UNDESA. And they will help us to answer to some of the questions. I will also pose some questions to them. And for now, I will go back to Emma. And I think, Angie, you could also tackle this question, which was basically to ask how we can get the voluntary. The question said, how can we get the voluntary policies agreed at the event so we can follow up with our country leadership? So I'm imagining, how do people get access to the outcomes of the conference so that they could follow up at the country level? Emma, do you want to take this question?
Sure. But I also think that Yasmin from UNDESA can explain a bit further. But as I mentioned, the Water Action Agenda will be presented to the world during the closing plenary, but it will be available on the website and it will be shared as broad as possible. But maybe Yasmin has some more specific information where it can be found exactly. So that's
Okay.
think, yeah.
Yes.
Is
Thank
that
you, Ella.
sufficient answers? Yeah.
Yes, Yasmin, if you could take the floor, and there's a question I think, Yasmin, that you could also help with. It's a question about invitations. A number of ministers, a number of colleagues saying that their ministers do not have an invitation or they are not aware in terms of how they can get to participate. So over to you, Yasmin.
Thank you so much. I think there's a problem with my video. I'm not able to start it, so I apologize for that. But I'll be sharing in the chat the link to the website where you can learn more about the Water Action Agenda. It includes an FAQ, and it also shows you how you can register your commitments. The Water Action Agenda, it's really been envisioned as a way to mobilize action-oriented commitments towards the Water Action Agenda and towards the water decade. So that's something that we really encourage people to go ahead and lodge their commitments as a way to get involved with the conference and to get involved with SDG 6. The Water Action Agenda commitments that are logged before the 1st of March also have the opportunity to be really showcased during the conference. There's the possibility to be selected during the SDG Media Zone moment. So this is a great way to connect, and it's also helps us put together a good pool for potential speakers. So that's more on the Water Action Agenda, and I've shared here the link in the chat for those that want to check out the website for a bit more information. As far as invitations on a ministerial level, I encourage you to send any of those questions over to the water email. I can manage that and flag that over to the appropriate office. But normally those invitations should have gone out. So if there is an oversight in that regard, please do flag this through the email and do specify, of course, all of the names involved, and we'll take care of that as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Yasmin. And could you still just for clarification's sake, the invitation goes to the head of state, and it is the head of state who determines who goes, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so for ministers who do not have an invitation, is it likely that their head of state would have received the invitation, and therefore it's something they need to check internally in the country?
Normally, yes, it should be checked, I think, bilaterally and internally. But of course, if there is, we can even refer this. So if there is strong hesitation, please don't hesitate to reach out through the water email.
Perfect, perfect. Thank you very much. Thanks, Yasmin. And that email is in the chat. It's water2023@un.org. And again, encouraging people to check in the chat for any further conversations. Angie, did you want to say anything regarding the commitments, also in terms of relation to the mutual accountability mechanism? I know that you had touched on this, but I'm thinking, as Katarina had also indicated, that there will be a strong push from our side in terms of follow-up. How could we get that to actually happen well with the mechanism that's there, following up on commitments that are made here?
Sure. Thank you for the question, Sitali. And as I mentioned before, we would like to make sure that from our side at SWA, we are able to push for these commitments to happen on the ground and actually be implemented. So if your organization or your government is making Water Action Agenda commitments, this is great, and we would like to encourage you to do that. Yasmin has posted the link to do that, but also you can also register those commitments as mutual accountability mechanism commitments, or MAM commitments, as we like to say in short, so that it enters into the cycle of MAM commitments and their follow-up, so that SWA from its side can help you report on these commitments, make sure that other partners in the country are on board with these commitments and are helping you implement them, and also that you are all at country level holding each other accountable for their implementation, which is why we say mutual accountability, and at the same time that these commitments get reported on in different high-level meetings happening in the future. The follow-up process happens both at national level and at global level, where countries and partners hold each other accountable to those commitments that they make, which is why we want to make sure that they are tabled under the MAM so we can push this process from SWA side as well. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Oh, merci beaucoup, Angie. Nous avons une question qui vient de Tamba.
We have a question from Tamba, and he wants to know if the activities will occur for young people.
So Tamba is asking if there will be activities for young people. Could we give this to Emma? And then I want to ask Paul and Kate to get ready because I have a question for you. Emma, could you answer this question about the activities for young people? Would it be you? Would it be Yasmin?
Yeah, okay, I can give it a start. Yasmin can maybe complement. Yes, youth participation has been one of the focus areas for the Dutch government, or for the co-host, really, to enable that. So there will be a plenitude of youth organizations organizing side events. They are also involved in organization of the special events. They are invited as speakers during the interactive dialogues as well. But I'm sure there will be also special events during the New York Water Week, for instance, as an example, that gather youth. So there are different opportunities really for youth to be participating. We have also been promoting the inclusion of youth delegates within the official government delegations coming to New York. So this is, I think, part of the answer to your question. And I can possibly hand over to Yasmin here again, if she has any complementary information or more specific events for youth.
Thank you, Irma. I don't have a lot to add other than, because everything that you said is quite true, which is that there definitely are lots of moments, I think, for youth to be involved and also to showcase, I think, their commitments to water in the special events and inside events, and New York Water Week in parallel as well. What I will say also is that we are in, we have some plans to make sure that we have a program that's very easy for youth to navigate, to understand which events may be more catered to them or may be able to amplify a bit more youth voices. So what I would recommend to keep up with some of these kind of packages that we have for youth would be to register for the newsletter if you have not already. This is where we're frequently sending updates and registers and informing about our youth matchmaking processes for the conference. So I can share here also the link for the newsletter if you are not already registered. I think this is a really great tool to keep up with the latest. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Yasmin and Emma. Also from SWA side, we have a new youth champion who we announced in January. She will also be at the conference attending different events, but also available to engage in different activities. She's from Kenya. Her name is Anita Soina. So just to let people know about that. Paul and Kate, I had put a small call out for you. So here's the question to you. Would like to know if you could you tell us a little bit about the structure of Dialogue 1 and what we're hoping to get out of it to make sure we strategically influence high-level decision makers that will be present at the conference. So any one of you who would like to take it first? Paul, can I put you on the spot?
Of course you can. Yeah, can you hear me okay, Sitali?
Very well. Loud
okay,
and
I apologize. I picked up a cold, so I apologize if I'm not very clear. But yes, just a few minutes on this. So the UK and the government of the Dominican Republic have been selected as co-chairs for the first interactive dialogue, which is on the 22nd in the morning between 9 o'clock and 1 o'clock. In terms of the intention of this dialogue really is to promote interactive discussion and debate across a range of stakeholders, also a range of sectors, on two very connected themes. One is about improving access to sustainable and resilient wash, and the other one is about fulfilling our responsibilities and delivering the rights to water and sanitation. Those two things are actually very, very obviously connected. So my understanding of, from UNDESA, and we have Yasmin here to confirm, is that basically there's going to be an introduction. There's no doubt going to be introductions, co-chairs, moderator. We have a moderator. We believe that's the executive director of UNICEF, will be represented by a minister, so no doubt will be the Dominican Republic. And then the first part of the dialogue is a panel discussion. We have panelists representing different regions and countries, so governments are going to be there. At least my understanding is we'll have 4 panelists. They will respond to some of the questions which have already been posed or framed in the concept note that many of you have contributed to. Yeah, and then after that is the interactive dialogue. I should say there's also a couple of discussants. We know one is a youth champion, so the individual who's learning about youth, yes, there will be youth in this dialogue. I believe it's an individual from Nigeria, but I don't think it's going to be limited to that either. Yeah. Then interactive dialogue. Now, the purpose of the interactive dialogue, which is the bulk of the rest of the meeting, is really to flesh out, to get participants, member states, and other stakeholders, yeah, to hear from them and flesh out commitments. And those commitments are relating to, if you like, the so-called game changers that can lead to accelerated progress on rights and accelerated progress on access to wash, as I just discussed. I think it'll focus on it can either focus on some of the key themes of the Global Accelerated Framework, or it can look at issues of which are more familiar maybe to SWA in terms of leadership, accountability, governance, finance systems, that sort of thing. Yeah, but it will be interactive, and that's the job of the co-chairs, is to make it interesting, engaging, and action focused. This will then be brought together both at the back end of the interactive dialogue, but also summarized on the last day, on the 24th, when there is the last plenary session is basically putting this together. I should say that the last thing I'll say before I hand over to Kate is that, of course, this is just an event. It doesn't stop there. In fact, that's just the starting point. It's my understanding that the 2 co-chairs and UNDESA, in fact, we all want to start framing, to pull out the essence of the conference and establish what is known as a coalition, if you like, a coalition of the willing. There has never been a coalition of the unwilling that I'm aware of, to really start focusing their actions, improve coordination and sharing of ideas and lessons on some of these actions that I referred to. For example, systems. Yeah, how do we really do systems work? How do we really pull in additional finance? And maybe that's something that we could also work with SWA to help as we proceed beyond the conference. Okay, so Kate, what did I miss out, Kate? Apart from
not much at all, Paul. I can't enable my video, so bear with me. But just to say that the WHO and UNICEF were in the background coordinating the concept paper for theme 1. Hopefully you've all had a chance to look at that, but I think what you'll see there is the main messages emerging from the broadest dialogue we could have on this was things that are probably quite familiar to you all. You know, the need for massive acceleration, highlighting how much progress we need to make, also trying to frame it somewhat positively, pointing out there are good examples of progress, and that often WASH progress has preceded economic development, not the other way around, highlighting the need for quadrupling of progress, human rights, of course, and the interlinkages with other areas of progress on education, health, you name it. And then really trying to sort of pivot the transformational change and recommendations largely around kind of leadership and system strengthening. So and again structured around those 5 accelerator themes: so governance, finance, data, capacity, and innovation. And I think, of course, this is the thrust of this paper, which we would love to see aligned in the commitments that come out of the dialogue. But these are themes that are really resonating around the sector really strongly now. In the most recent GLASS report and the forthcoming Lancet Commission, and also things like the All Systems Go conference coming up in May, hot on the heels, and also the HLPF. So I think we're seeing a really nice and strong alignment in messaging, and we're just hoping we can get the most out of this dialogue. And obviously very thankful to the UK and the Dominican Republic for their leadership. I'll stop there.
Great, thank you so much, Kate. We'll try and see what's happening with your video, so we could have you on screen when you speak next. And thanks, Paul. Sorry about the code that you're catching, but it's given you a golden voice. Well, wishing you the best to get to us soon. Yasmin, I wonder if we can do a rapid fire conversation with you, because there are questions that I think relate to side events and participation, etc., etc. So if you, Yasmin, if I could just ask you a couple of questions, very, very quick responses. Do you know at this point how many side events have been applied for? How many have been accepted?
So I can say that we received over 1,300 proposals for the side events, and that's the total for inside, outside, and virtual. We have communicated for outside and virtual side events, but we are still trying to do our best to accommodate the maximum number of inside side event proposals. We aim to inform approved proposals by next week, but this is kind of contingent on a number of logistics. So the aim is for next week, and I think we're looking on track for this.
Perfect. And so if somebody is interested to do a side event right now, that ship has sailed, right?
So to be formally included in the proposal, or in the program, sorry, for the conference, yes, the open call for side events has closed. There are, of course, other ways to get involved, or if, for example, once the program for side events is published, then of course being able to either attend a side event is also a possibility. There's also New York Water Week, which is another channel that's in parallel with the water conference. That could be an interesting one to host a side event through their channel. Could be another option as well.
So, and who will be allowed to attend the plenary sessions? So if you could talk a little bit about how people can get into the plenary sessions, if they can.
Sure. So this is still being reviewed by the Secretariat. There is the information note, which has just been published. I believe for the plenary sessions, there's a first come, first served basis, but it does depend a bit on the badge type. So the badge type will have to do with your registration and the registration category. And this, I think, will have a lot to do with the seating. But I'll share the link to the information note here, which goes into a bit more detail kind of on all of the logistics for actual attendance and then how we're able to register. But no, there is no extra registration step envisioned for any of the sessions or events.
Great, fantastic. And how will the process for speaking work? So will it only be member states that will be able to speak, or will other stakeholders also be allowed to speak in the official sessions?
We are currently reviewing the speaking slot process. So I think once we're able to, it depends quite a lot on the timing, and then of course based on the nominations that we receive, kind of the timing that's envisioned for this. And there are still, for special events, for example, we're still finalizing the format for these sessions. So I think it'll just be a matter of, I think, a bit more. We still have a bit more planning, I think, in that regard to be able to give a full answer on this. Yes, but I will say that participation overall is strongly envisioned. I think it will be a mostly open process. Great,
fantastic. So last one, about heads of state or ministers. Do you have a sense right now in terms of participation? Should we expect a good number of heads of state in New York, or is it looking like it's mostly ministers that will be there?
I can say that heads of states have been strongly encouraged to prioritize the conference. So I would think that there'll be normally quite high number of participation across heads of states.
Okay, thank you. And for the actual document, so just to be completely clear, I think Emma had touched on this. So there isn't an outcome document, but there's a PGA document.
That's correct. And I will say also that the Water Action Agenda 2 is considered to be one of the outcome of the conference as well. So that's why we really strongly encourage people to make their commitments, and certainly to do so as soon as possible if they would like their commitment to be amplified.
Okay, thank you so much. So looking again in the chat in terms of any additional questions that we may have, yeah, Mali would like to make an intervention, but I don't think we have the capability to bring them off from the participants' side. So for Mali or other colleagues, please just type the question, put it in the chat, and then we'll pick it up and we will bring it to the floor. For civil society, so there's a question, please provide the information on civil society mobilization or support for participation of registered participants. Angie, I wonder if you could take this question also addressing how SWA has supported some of the civil society participation, and I'll be happy to contribute as well. Angie, over to you.
Sure. I think SWA is supporting 3 civil society representatives to come to New York for the meeting and to be to participate in it. However, I think also that the government of the Netherlands, perhaps Irma, could add on that. I think they had a program for supporting some civil society organizations, but the number is very limited for the people that we can support, either from SWA side or from other partner side, I believe. So for us at SWA, we cannot support more than the 3 participants that we are already sponsoring. Thank you.
Great. And before Emma comes to the floor, let me just add to that. So we're supporting the 3, that also comes with the support from the Netherlands government. And then there are also some steering committee members who are also CSOs who we are also supporting, who will be there. So it will be slightly, a few more added to the 3. And there have been preparatory activities that the civil society colleagues have been doing together with Butterfly Effect and others that are helping to bring everyone together and better understand the process. Emma, do you want to add anything on this question?
Yeah, maybe just to explain that indeed the Netherlands as co-host, as I mentioned, puts a high value on the inclusiveness of the conference and really promoted the participation of those groups who are usually more remote from those processes, for who it is usually more difficult to participate in UN conferences and international policy events, like, for instance, civil society organizations, women's groups, indigenous youth. And so we have been trying to enable that as much as possible. And one of the activities we undertook was that we set up a small fund to support those target groups. As the resources were limited, we identified about 40 or 50 international and regional networks, either from civil society organizations, indigenous youth, and so on. And we have selected them and invited them to be able to access to this fund, and plenty did actually receive funding. I think over 30 international and regional organizations did access to this fund. We deliberately limited to channeling those resources on a request of those networks, because the funds are too limited to be able to fund and help every single organization. The resources were also very much aiming at the empowerment or the preparation, if you like, and mobilization of the respective networks and their constituencies, their members, basically. So really that a meaningful participation can be ensured. So that was the spirit of that fund. Resources are almost exhausted, but we have still some small resources available, and we can here and there make some exceptions for individual organizations or individuals who have already ensured the accreditation, who have already assured the visa, and who have an important role to play in the conference by speaking in a side event or so on, but without raising any expectations. And there may be a small possibility for a few people maybe to accommodate such requests. But I really want to be very cautious in this, because that will be on an exceptional basis. Yes.
Completely clear, Emma. Thank you so much. Yasmin, I would like to ask you to go into the chat and respond to the question from Benjamin about the possibility of individual professionals attending the meeting. I'd like to call to the floor right now, Paul, so that he could give us the closing remarks, and then we will close. Paul, over to you. And thank you so much for joining today.
Oh, yes. So, yeah, very quickly. Firstly, thanks to all the participants. Yeah, I see we have, what, 80, 90 participants here. So thank you very much for your time. This has been, you know, a very useful information sharing event. There's another one this afternoon. So congratulations to the SWA team and Sitali in particular for holding this, but also the same to other panelists. I think that was very useful, especially good to see UNDESA and WHO, and of course, Irma herself at the heart of the matter. A few things to take away. Yeah, the first thing is, let's get those commitments in. Use the MAM process, use the UNDESA website process, get those commitments in, and try and frame them not in terms of kind of we're going to deliver so many toilets, but we're going to help deliver or work with government to deliver some sort of transformative action, like on systems or on finance or on leadership or accountability. That's the first point. The second thing is to reflect on the fact that we have to work together, not just in a conference, but more importantly on WASH. To secure rights to WASH, to secure what we're after, we have to work together. This is all about collaboration, working together. The same applies to the conference as well. So when you're making your commitments, think about not of those in isolation, but also think of those in terms of collaboration with other partners, in particular in support of government leadership. The third thing is we had some good questions voiced by youth and civil society. Yeah. Just because this is a UN event in New York, do not think this is not for you. Absolutely not. In fact, we can't make progress on WASH without your inputs. I speak to you separately, youth, if you are listening. Civil society, absolutely critical for this. So we will ensure, for example, in the interactive dialogue that we are co-chairing, that there will be opportunities for civil society to engage and also for youth to engage. And I mean engage, not just listen, I mean engage. And that really is about it, apart from just to say a big thanks to everyone again, and just to ask Sitali, given the fact this has been incredibly useful, are you thinking of running another one in a few weeks' time? Back to you.
That's a really good question, Paul. Thank you so much. I think it's not impossible. I think it's something that we could definitely think about. We were thinking of doing something for the constituencies, so a follow-up for the external support agency constituencies and others. But I think we could very definitely consider doing one before the event. There's a lot though that's happening, so we can see how well we can manage it. For now, a really, really huge thanks to our panelists who gave us really good insights. And also to the team in the SWA that helped to organize this. We're extremely grateful to the Netherlands government and Tajikistan for bringing us this event 40 years after the last one, and for really putting action at the front of what needs to happen. As has been indicated, there will be some follow-up steps. We'll send the webinar recording to be on the website. We will also do the constituency conversations for specific constituencies, as well as the country discussions. We may, that should be announced, it will be announced, we may do another event in due course. Just to thank all of you, merci beaucoup, et bonne journée à tous.
Thank you, have a good day this afternoon. We'll have another meeting so as to proceed with the preparation for this conference. Thank you very much to all of you, and have a lovely day.